Yahsinni, oh yeah.
All right, so Yahsinni is in the house, and I thought I'd keep my channel going in the direction that it's been going, and that is um, becoming sovereign, um, applying and filling out UCC1 codes, talking about money, talking about straw men or your straw man, and how to take a hold of your own straw man, how to gain your trust. And I've had my nephew on here giving you a lot of information. But then, too, it's your due diligence to investigate and learn on your own instead of waiting for step by step instructions because you can't process the information yourself to get to where you want to be. And so while you figure all of that out, I'll just keep dropping gems on my channel, and hopefully you'll find those pieces to the puzzle that you wish to complete. And so today, while digging in my library, I came up with a PDF that I had and didn't know that I had, and it's called "How I Clobbered Every Bureaucratic Cash Something Something or Other." That's all it'll show me now, and I didn't want to. Maybe I will. Okay. Um, it's not going to give me the whole name unless I go all the way up here, which I'll do. Okay, let's get it right. It's a book called, let me share my screen. How I Clobbered Every Bureaucratic Cash Confiscatory Agency Known to Man. So it's a spiritual economics book on money and remembering who you are. And while the first 36 pages that I read were very, very interesting, I'm going to take you down to the part that I want to read to you today. It starts on page 136. So let me get it like this. I mean, it starts on page 36, not 136. And it's part of the introduction, I believe. Look at this good stuff I'm passing over already. There is no money. Yeah, since 1933, I believe. There it is. April 10th, 1933. Wow, okay. So I want to get to where I want to get to, so I make sure I got enough room or time to read it all. And it's called The Commerce Game. And I'm going to let you read it with me, silently, of course. So, since we are unable to pay debt, we are also unable to incur or create debt. Money is now created by bankers. Goldsmith learned that they could issue gold certificates as promise to pay rather than moving gold coins around. So the present day banknotes represent the confidence of the people to be able to exchange them for goods and services. It's all just bookkeeping entries, shifting of credit and debit. So we used to have real money. Now only our straw man has worthless notes are valuable within the game, think Monopoly, but worthless in the grand scheme of our lives. So the government created the straw man in order to engage us in their game. The straw man's name is similar to ours, only if it's in uppercase. It shows up on everything which you think identifies you, but the identification is government issued. So I went into the post office to cash a money order and was asked for ID. I handed over my passport and I was asked for a second ID. I told her, I can get into any country in the world with this passport, and yet the post office calls it insufficient. Why two pieces of ID? I was told. In case it was forged, I responded. Well, first, if I am smart enough to forge a passport, don't you think I'm smart enough to forge an extra piece of ID? Just in case. Second, whenever I complain to the government about the government, I'm always told by the government that I am the government. So here's my government issued ID. I gave her my self created international driver permit. She accepted it. She said, listen, I gave her my self created international driver permit. She accepted it. Aren't they all right? So any information that feds got in order to issue government issued ID came from me. This makes me the authority. Why would anyone trust a third party but not me when I'm the original authority? She even admitted, quote, the policy wasn't designed to make sense, end quote. All contracts we signed have the strawman name, not ours, on them. Have you ever noticed that your driver's license, bank statement, and any bill that you receive is in all capital letters? Even the noun corrected CDN or driver's license list name for last name first, which still makes it a corporate name because sovereigns don't have last names. They have given names and surnames. How is it that the feds can take our houses, property, bank accounts, children, cars, etc., because we don't own them? Living souls do not have names. We have descriptions. For instance, Smith from blacksmith, the description of one's trade. This is why the native the native people's names are the way they are. Only corporations have names. Hence, when a cop or judge asks you your name, it would be foolish to answer him for several reasons. One, you don't have a name, so you would be lying. Two, what you believe to be your name can't possibly be truth. It can be only hearsay because you don't have firsthand knowledge that this is you. It is only by hearing the name repeatedly and reference to you over the years that you believe this name refers to you. You do not know it as fact. Three, when you state a name before the court, you have contracted with the court, thereby granting it jurisdiction. Remember, the name is the government created corporation, which they want you to believe is you. If you state it as you, you've just contracted with thugs. You'll recall that when the judge asked me my name, I responded, if I tell you my name, will I have entered into a contract with you? And I was promptly thrown out of court. Thrown out of court. Four, giving hearsay evidence in court is fraudulent, not to mention contempt of court. Oh, yeah. Say you didn't know what? Remember Peter Fonda? Quote, try not paying your taxes and find out who owns your house. End quote. We don't own anything. It appears as if our straw man does, only it is a fiction and so can't hold a legal title or a manufacturer's certificate of origin. So the creator of this fictional entity, the government, holds the legal title. If the straw man incurs a debt, we are held as surety to pay it, and yet there is nothing with which to pay, not to mention, why are we paying for something we can't own and have only use privileges? But the fictitious straw man can pay fictitious funds? FRNBCN. And we're going to find out what that is later on. So the straw man can pay a debt. The banksters, not bankers, banksters, set up an account for it. This is your SSN or SIN. Notice your name isn't on that card. The corporation name is in uppercase letters. So the government now refers to us as, quote, human resources, end quote. The collateral on the national debt. And the U.S. government's demolition of the World Trade Center, the living souls who died were referred to as collateral damage. This tells us that we are considered collateral by your government. Yet, one must be the holder in due course of the resource in order to use it as collateral. And interestingly, the government holds our birth certificates as warehouse recipients. So it appears that the feds are the holder in due course of our bodies, our labor, our finances, our property, our lives. They have legal title. We have only equitable title. We are allowed only the use of our bodies, finances, property, all of which are owned by the government, yet the privilege of our using them demands a use tax. And by the way, the demolition of the World Trade Center was to wipe out corporate debt. How can a phenomenal debt created by the corporations of this world be proven if all the evidence of said debt were lost in those collapsed towers? Ground zero, the balance on the debt. I read about a man in the UK, John, who defended himself and his wife against two intruders by gaining control of a knife, which one was wielding. One escaped, and John stabbed the other, who died. John was held by police. For how long, I don't know, but most people reading the story must have thought he was being held for murder and are wondering how absurd the laws have gotten when a man is held for murder in the name of self defense. But it has nothing to do with murder. All crime is commercial crime. The feds have convinced us we are corporate entities, and John impeded commerce. The common law, which applies to all living souls, is we are free to do what we please as long as we do not infringe on the life, liberty, property, or rights of another. So it does not allow for any government to prosecute or fine us for victimless crimes. Statute laws have arisen for this purpose, but their power is limited by common sense and by the resolve of those who would stand up for their natural rights. So one can be fined only if he has signed and breached a contract. Under common law, however, a contract must be entered into knowingly, voluntarily, and intentionally, or it is unenforceable. Remember that one of the requirements of a contract is full disclosure. Government departments are aware of this and circumvent it by intimidating us and to signing agreements that are meant to void common right laws or common law rights. This one law, which takes all real crime into account, has now been replaced by over 60 million statutes, all of which compel one to do something. Law cannot compel performance. So these 60 million statutes are all based upon commerce. So John is being held because of the only crime now in existence, that of impeding commerce. So what commerce? Let's take a closer look at precisely who these intruders were and why they were in John's house. So they were collateral belonging to the government. John did not kill another living soul. He destroyed government property or collateral. Since thieves rarely break into occupied houses, we can safely assume that they were on drugs, desperate for something to steal and sell for funds for their next fix. So, who is the creditor of these funds? The banksters, specifically, the CIA or the drug cartel. So, John's taking the intruder out of the commerce game puts a damper on the expected funds which this man would have paid the banksters during his remaining lifetime, not to mention having funded the CIA to do even more biz, that of addicting kids to drugs. John thwarted business. This is why he was held. He was held as surety for his straw man since he was not the holder in due course of his straw man, so he likely will be charged. But with what? The courts cannot let the cat out of the bag on this commerce game. So once the attorneys and the courts collect an extortive amount of the straw man's funds via John from his attempt to defend himself, they would drop charges which were never laid in the first place. I'm sure John has no idea what is going on, and he will never understand until he learns the commerce game and how he can claim his straw man to perfect a superior claim to his debtor straw man, which will no longer be the debtor of the banksters. In fact, all he had to do was decline to contract with the feds. But most are so unaware of the power of contract. So speaking of drugs, here's what Norman D. Livergood had to say about the, quote, war on drugs, end quote. Quote, it, one, provides cover for the U.S. intervention and control. Two, adds to the military budget. Three, increases foreign sales of U.S. weaponry. Four, keeps price of drugs up and costs down. End quote. So domestically, the drug war is incarcerating millions of felons on the basis of mandatory minimum sentencing, provides profits for privatized prisons and companies, providing funds to U.S. organizations and individuals through drug money laundering, covert agencies for black funding, politicians, and bankers hired to protect drug revenues, politicians who receive drug money campaign contributions, inflating police spending and revenues, seizing assets, increasing repression in inner cities, and masking attack on civil liberties. So in the USA, and that's a small u, 2% of the world's population, 7 people are in prison for every one in every other country in the world. Okay? In the USA. 2% of the world population. But 7 people are in prison for every one person in every other country of the world. Drug use is down from 1979, but this is due to millions in prison. Along with the fear of what crack can do, there are two approaches. One, incarceration for users and military action to stop drug production internationally, or decriminalization and treatment. Remember prohibition. All the nonsense stopped once alcohol became legal again. Why would those in charge of the drug war want to kill the goose that laid the golden eggs? The drug cartel, or banksters, economic elite, are making a killing on this drug war. So we're now awaiting 300 tons of heroin from the Afghan opium. So in the USA, the prison business is huge. Under the guise of punishment for a crime, prison owners have extremely cheap labor at their disposal. At least 86% and possibly 94% of all prisoners are nonviolent. They are there because they contracted with thugs, those who convinced them that doing drugs, most of which is marijuana in possession, and under the law, they, they are to be punished. Now they are working for pennies an hour. Okay. So the drug biz is only the means to the end, which is prison. Prisoners' bonds are sold on the securities market to A.G. Edwards and Merrill Lynch. A felon is worth about $4 million. The city of the prison gets $40 million. Investors offer to buy for 40% and increases minimum 200% for bank securities. So over 50% of money market bonds are purchased in the Orient. The stockholders are the owners of Correction Corp of America, which owns all the private prisons and sells the commercial paper on each prisoner or slave. So Payne Weber is the prime stockholder. If you hold stock with these international businesses, you are betraying your fellows by keeping them in prison for a commercial crime, yet not the true crime of infringement of the life, liberty, property, or rights of another living soul. You wonder how the USA can afford a war. The banksters are selling your fellow living souls as goods, which are warehoused in prisons of the corporate USA/CA, meaning United States and Canada. So 16 pages of corporations are identified as involved in prison profit. Don't bother to ask to look at their books. This aspect of their biz is not published. Hmm. All investment firms work for the USA/CA. If you are involved, you might want to reassess your intentions from a more ethical perspective. Every prisoner bond has a committee on uniform securities identification number so you can track the trade and how much the principal or prisoner is worth, the funds of which he'll never see. When will we learn that teaching someone a lesson never teaches anything but resentment, that it only inspires the recipient to greater acts of defiance? That's a quote by Harry Brown. So, the war on drugs was designed not to work for us. It was designed to work for the banksters, same as Nixon's war on cancer. It worked for the medical mafia, in particular the genocidal pharmaceutical industry, not for those who have developed cancer. The government acts for our straw man, which appears to us that it is we. In order to take back control of our lives, we must take control of our straw man. Fortunately, we now know how to do this. Since living souls cannot pay debt, we can now only discharge debt. and that's in the HJR 192 slash Order of Council number 16. So since all debt is created on paper, all debt can be discharged with other pieces of paper. When you take control of your straw man, you will no longer be held as surety for it, and you can discharge its debts with your signature, a promise to pay, the same way the banksters do it. So banks create credit. It is a mistake to suppose that bank credit is created to any extent by the payment of money into the banks. A loan made by a bank is a clear addition to the amount of money in the community. That comes out of the Encyclopedia Britannica, 14th edition. So the issue which has swept down the centuries and which will have to be fought sooner or later is the people versus the banks. And that's coming from Lord Acton, Lord Chief Justice of England back in 1875. And it looks like the rest of these are just going to be quotes. So, your papers, please. So, it might seem that a pragmatic solution is to get assets out of paper and into substance. Yet, we must remember that unless we file the appropriate paper, we won't even own any substance we think we might. A correctly filed financial statement, which is UCC slash PPSA, will grant immunity to whatever stunt the PTB, which is the powers that be, attempt to pull on us. I've heard it said more than once that the Jews would never have relocated had they had their papers in order. I don't think there is one movie about Nazi Germany where some English speaking actor with a bad accent doesn't demand, "Your papers, please." I don't think this is any coincidence. Papers must have meant something. I do not think they are referring to passports. To what they refer are papers indicating which one is a creditor or a debtor, whether one is the holder in due course of one's assets or is being held as surety for alleged debt, and whether one has legal title or only equitable title to one's body, rights, and property. We must get our papers in order. It's not difficult to do, but we have to want to learn and know it to stop believing the propaganda. So naturally, the common people don't want war, neither in Russia nor in England, nor for that matter in Germany. That is understood. But after all, it is the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it is in a democracy or a fascist dictatorship or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All I have to do is tell them they're being attacked and denounce the peacemakers for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country. That's a quote from Waring at the Nuremberg trials. And in 1992, George H.W. Bush told White House reporter Sarah McClendon, if the people were to ever find out what we have done, we would be chased down the streets and lynched. Okay. The next section is I've been needed some water, but I wanted to get past this first. Mm. The next section was called the federal income tax, and it starts off with these people just don't want to pay their fair share. So that's going to be a good one, but I'm not going to read it. This is a PDF I'm reading from. All you have to do is just go Google how I clobbered every bureaucratic cash, blah, 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 and read it yourself. Mm-mm-mm. I am going to come back, though, and read this section on attorneys because I'm interested. I'm extremely interested in how that shit works. And if I had time, I would read it to you now. But I don't. And so I won't. And with that being said, and with that being read, Yahsinni is not going to bed because there's no rest for the weary. Oh, I'm out of here. I'm so goddamn out of here. Peace and love for all those who stuck around.